I'm sorry, folks. I don't think that an apology is enough. I'm sorry, folks, but to me, reconciliation is not justice. Native title is not land rights. It seems to me, in the last 30 years, and especially in the last 10 years, that all of us, both you who were taken away and we who weren't, have been dudded yet again. Most people in this society seem to think, and probably a lot of people in this audience might like to think, that native title somehow or other has solved all the problems. Well, folks, I strongly suggest you ask the Yorta Yorta people about the Native Title Act. And we're not talking about a Native Title Act that was fiddled with by John Howard. We're talking about a Native Title Act that was given to us by the Hawke and Keating government, folks. So remember that when you get your slimy ALP politicians coming around nowadays making all sorts of promises that they're not gonna keep.
What are you promising?
They haven't kept them in the past and they won't keep them in the future. Remember Bob Hawke when he came to power, folks. He said national uniform land rights legislation for Aboriginal people. I mean, 2 years later, in the face of a vicious, racist, Goebbels-style propaganda campaign on the part of the Australian Mining Industry Council, Bob Hawke wilted, backed off. What did we get instead? We got ATSI. Aborigines talking shit in Canberra. What else did we get? We got reconciliation. Reconciliation, as admirable as it might seem to so many people today, it is still nevertheless something that did not come out of the Australian community. It was not a spontaneous thing that emerged from either the Aboriginal or the broader Australian community. It was created by government as an act of Parliament. You cannot legislate freedom, folks. You cannot legislate justice in that way. 30 years ago, we were talking about land rights. None of this Mickey Mouse native title, the most inferior form of land tenure under British law. We were talking about land rights, freehold title, as the Northern Territory people already had in the 1976 Land Rights Act. In terms of the 76 Land Rights Act, native title is a giant leap backwards. So folks, all I'm saying is don't believe the hype. At least show that you're intelligent people by delving a little bit below the surface and seeking the real truth about where we are not at today. I'm sorry, an apology won't provide for the pain, won't provide for the real needs that exist, not only for the stolen generations, but for those who weren't taken. Land rights was important 30 years ago because it would provide a means by which the Aboriginal community could go through the process of reconstruction and recuperation. It provided a means by which we could strive towards economic independence, the only form of genuine freedom that you will get in a society like this. Until Koori communities have got economic independence, they have no freedom. We are still subject to the expectations of a broader community that don't give a damn about us. Don't expect that Kim Beazley's going to give any of you people a damn thing. He won't. He won't until we get people back out in the streets again like we had them 30 years ago. The only time that Indigenous people ever changed the course of Australian history was at the Aboriginal Embassy in 1972, and that came about because of mass action. None of this wishy-washy negotiations in Canberra behind closed doors amongst elite groups. We need mass people action again in Australia to try and resurrect the sentiment that existed in the broader Australian community in 1967, when in the only definitive public opinion poll that's ever been held of the Australian people about what they think about Aboriginal people, 92% voted for justice for Aboriginal people. And I believe that a lot of that sentiment is still out there. So thank you, folks. That's all I've got to say.